that every athlete, regardless of their background, their identity, their ability, or access level, has a real shot at thriving, right? And not just surviving. We are seeing more awareness, more adaptive programs, changes in leadership, and a real push to make space for everyone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Steps, produced by Apollo Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. I'm Bree Zabrowski here with Melissa McDaniel Grisham, and we have another fantastic episode lined up for you today, talking about inclusivity in cheer and dance spaces. So let's get into it. We're excited to welcome a first-time guest, Kinshasa Garrett. She is the Southwest Regional Director of the USASF, which is United States All-Star Federation, right?
Yep,
That's
that's
right.
it.
Okay. As well as the Enrichment and DEIS coordinator for the organization with over 30 years of experience in cheer and dance communities. Welcome, Kinshasa. We're so excited to have you.
Me too. Thank you.
So I want to dive in immediately, but we like to start at a very basic level on this show so we can get everyone watching on the same page. So what does inclusion in cheer and dance really mean in your opinion?
When we talk about inclusion in cheer and dance, we're not just talking about who's allowed to show up. We're talking about who feels seen, right, who feels valued and truly a part of the experience. And inclusion means making sure that every athlete, regardless of their background, their identity, their ability, or access level, has a real shot at thriving, right? And not just surviving.
So, beyond the buzzword, right? What does a truly inclusive environment look like and feel like for athletes and performers of all backgrounds, abilities, and identities?
You know, Inclusion has definitely become one of those buzzwords, but when we strip it down and we really ask, what does a truly inclusive environment look and feel like? It's about belonging, right? It's, walking into a gym, a studio, a club, or even a competition, and knowing you don't have to shrink or hide the parts of who you are to fit in, whether you're an athlete of color, an athlete with a disability, non-binary, not neurodivergent, from a low income background, whatever the story is, whatever your story is, you should feel like that space was made with you in mind and not just that you were added later.
And I think that that's the big thing. There's a difference in being included and being affirmed. Like affirmed is what you want. Affirmed means that you are it's not accepted or tolerated, but this is built with you in mind. And gosh, I wish I could remember. Oh my gosh, it was probably a bunch of seasons ago. Um I don't remember. Anyway, it was probably a bunch of seasons ago, but it was, if when you're planning something or you're building something or you're creating something, if you center the most vulnerable population as you're doing it, then everybody else will be fine. Like in the planning, if you think about who is my most vulnerable population here, who is the most marginalized community that's going to be taking part in this, if you center them at the planning process, then everything else will fall into place from there. So I love the way that you said that. What are some of the most common barriers though that you think have historically prevented this type of inclusion from happening in cheer and dance?
Honestly, it's been a mix. Perceptions, access, and of course, policy have all played a role. And for a long time, there was this very narrow idea we talk in leadership about blind spots, right? And so there was a blind spot of what a cheerleader or a dancer should look like, right? And if you didn't fit that mold, whether because of race, body type, gender identity, or ability, you were often overlooked. And then you add in the cost of training, right? Uniforms, travel, choreography, access becomes a major barrier too. And when we look at policy, some rules and structures weren't built with inclusion in mind either, like gendered divisions or lack of accommodations for athletes with disabilities. But things are shifting, and we are seeing more awareness, more adaptive programs, changes in leadership, and a real push to make space for everyone. It's slow. It's very slow. For me, if I could, I Dream of Jeannie. I know a lot of the younger folks don't remember that show, but she would just right, and I wish that that's what we could do, but we can't. So it's slow, and but the needle's definitely moving in the right direction.
So you're involved deeply with USASF, as you know, we said, Southwest Regional Director of Enrichment and DEIS Coordinator. Can you share some of the specific initiatives or programs that USASF is implementing as a standard to promote inclusion in cheer and dance? And it sounds like they're working and things are moving in the right direction, but what impact specifically are those initiatives having from your perspective?
Yeah, so at USASF, we've been really intentional about building inclusion into the core of what we do, not just talking about it, but I like to say operationalizing it through the DEIS initiatives. We've launched the DEIS committee, which is huge. And that's made up of not only myself and a couple of other USASF staff, but also owners, coaches, event producers, and with our athlete advisory council as well. They're really in the thick of it. And some of the initiatives that we have been working on have come from them, right? They also want All Star to be more inclusive, but I think they're more boots on the ground than any of us, because they're involved in conversations, overhearing conversations, witnessing things that for them are not okay and that we could do better. So we have the AAC as well, and we have a peer mentoring program. We also have our conduct and compliance department as well. And if there are questions there where somebody's feeling that it, I would say, if on the let's say the darkest side of it, right, they're there to help educate. They're there to work with us as well, to again just kind of overcome some of the issues that come into play and that we become aware of. Once you know.
Yeah, you can't unknow it. Yeah, you can't unknow, and that's the thing about education is, you have an obligation that when you know better, you do better, and so the education portion of it is so important. So, are you encouraged by the reception of it, of all of this, and are you encouraged for the future of cheer and dance?
I am. I am. I tend to be a more optimistic person. And I think in this space, especially in this climate that we're all in, it's very easy to feel that you're not doing enough, or that, the industry isn't doing enough. And go dark in a lot of ways. But I'm very encouraged. I'm encouraged by the support that I receive, and that our committee receives from our board of directors, from our executive team, colleagues, and just about every day I'm receiving an email or a phone call, DEIS related, that is positive, and how changes are made. Because to be honest, as an organization, we don't necessarily see the day to day, right? A regional director will be maybe on site at an event and see some things. When we're at Worlds or our national conference, we're able to see the work. But we have to lean on our members, and to share those stories with us, so not only we can share them with the rest of the membership, but also that'll kind of give us a little encouragement to keep doing what we're doing.
I'm totally gonna go off on a tangent, Brie. I'm so very sorry. I don't know, is this my first tangent of the season? I have not had a tangent in a while. I think it's time. So, like, in the work that you're doing, and that you said the process is slow, and changes happening, but it's happening at a snail's pace. Do you ever feel like you get pushback in this work? And whether it be from the athletes, from the parents, from the coaches, from maybe even some regional level people who are working with you, and how do you overcome that pushback?
Yeah, of course there's pushback, right? There, it's yin and yang, right? I don't want to say black and white, but it's black and white, right? So there's always two sides to the coin, and it can be challenging. And I definitely, one of my leadership styles is heart centered. So there are moments where I may feel a little bit low and discouraged. I may be surprised sometimes by some of the pushback, but I also know that when you are, even in a small way, affecting positive change, the more pushback you receive tells me that we're doing what's supposed to be done. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing. And then, like I said, even the pushback that I receive and that we receive is helpful, right? That's very helpful too, because I want to know why there is pushback. I want to know, is it fear based? Is it something simple as just lack of education and knowledge, right? We're not the experts either. And so we lean on other organizations, like Rise, to help us understand some things too. It's not a perfect world. It's not, just cheer and dance that has these challenges. It's the world. But I think that, we're, regardless of the level of pushback, I know that we're on the right side of history.
Exactly. And that's so, so very important to make sure that you're on the right side of it when the story is retold, whatever that is. What did they say? Plan with the end in mind. Realize what side of that you want to be on when you're making decisions right now.
Well, and ultimately, and I say this all the time, and I'm sure my colleagues are just sick of me saying it, but it's all star. It's not some star, right? And so we want everybody. And that's difficult to do. And not only do we want everybody there, but we want everybody there to feel like they're a part of the party, right? They're part of the celebration. And as we were saying earlier, that they've been kept in mind when these decisions are made.
Mhm. I have this, I'm from the South, y'all. I'm from North Carolina, and we say, "No, no, really? I know you couldn't tell from my accent. You could probably never tell. I know it's very hard." But, we say y'all, and I bought this, bag that said, "Y'all means all," around around equity. Y'all means all. Uh, so Kinsashi, it's your first time with us, but just to let you know, we give homework, and it's good homework, and we want you to give our viewers their homework. What advice would you give to coaches, studio owners, athletes, and parents who want to actively foster a more inclusive environment in their program?
I love homework. I love receiving homework. I love giving homework. So this is my jam. And in this particular instance, it's very easy. It's listening, right? Really listening, actively listening to the voices that are in your space and the ones that are missing, right? That's the key. And then ask, right? And then ask questions, be open to feedback, and don't be afraid to admit that you don't know. I will tell you in a minute, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm not going to leave it at that, right? I'm going to try to find those pieces. Yeah, I think that the next step would be taking action, right? And that would be a part of the action. I think first you have to review your policies. You have to rethink your traditions, adjust language, diversify your music, your visuals, all those things. And then you have to, figure out if you're ready for the answers that you're going to receive.
That's true because I would the flip side of that is I do know some organizations that they don't want to know what their customer base thinks, and that's a huge red flag, right? Like, when you have people that really don't wanna know the answer, that tells you they wanna stay status quo, that it's probably a lot to do with the money at that point, right? And that they care for those details is not there, in my opinion.
That's it. That's it. I mean, it's and it's not hard, and if someone wanted to create I like to call it a temperature check, right? That's something easy to do. I mean, we've got ChatGPT that you can just throw a prompt in, right? And you'll be able to create some surveys there. You could ask your coaches, if you're the gym owner or the studio owner, you could ask parents, what are some things that should be included, do you think, in this survey? And that's that survey has to be focused on what you're hoping the results will end up becoming. It can't be what's your birthday, what's your favorite color. That's not what we're doing here, right? This needs to be something intentional and specific, and even offering even offering something like that would send me a message as a parent, right? As an athlete, they're asking me, obviously, their eyes are open, right? So, yeah, I would absolutely, suggest doing
And
something
I
like
think people get overwhelmed, like, I have to be fully ready to do this and implement all these things. And the real truth, I mean, and again, I'm not an expert, but I have learned enough from the show and from talking to different guests that you don't have to do it all at once. Like, it's easy to get overwhelmed by that. Just take a step, one step, and then another, and do the next right thing and do the next best thing and implement little changes that add up to big impact, right?
and it's not about being perfect. It's not about, like you said, getting it all done at one time. I think that's a huge mistake. I think you have, it's quality versus quantity, right? And I assure you, everything will move organically, right? And you're going to be able to check this off and then jazz walk your way to the next. And, as long as you're intentional and you're consistent and you are willing to grow, your staff is willing to grow, your club is willing to grow, then I mean, that's what matters. And then I will say, you also have to be, as an owner, you have to be prepared for the pushback. You have to be prepared for your staff to not want to be a part of this growth. Um, and then you have to decide what to do with that.
We have the same homework every week on our end, which is to take our free Steps Initiative course. It's the catalyst for this show. It is a 5-piece module. Every module is curated by experts in their field, and we're going to give you evidence based research and resources on topics like racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, and of course, dance, medicine, and science, where we live. And it's not meant to be a be all end all tool, but it is something that will lay a foundation for you so you can dive deeper on your own. Because when you know better, you do better. We encourage, staff, athletes, parents to take this course. And once again, it's absolutely free. Kinshasa, I know you mentioned Rise. Can you share? I know you had a few resources you wanted to mention today. Any resources to share with our community that you want to mention now?
Absolutely. Of course, I would say, member or not of the USASF, on our public website on the DEIS landing page, we have our DEIS toolkit for programs, which is a great resource, and very easy to read too. I don't think that it's scary at all. But we've got that as well with USASF. And like I said, our partners in this is not only Rise, and their website is risetowin.org, but also the Positive Coaching Alliance, which is amazing. And, like I said, we are not the experts, but as a mentor of mine used to say and continues to say, the answer's in the group. The answer's in the group.
And how can people get in touch with you if they have questions about USASF, any policies, or anything they can implement on the ground level within their gym or organization? How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my email address is K Garrett, that's the letter K, Garrett at usasf.net.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate the insight and for you sharing all of this with us. It's been really helpful, and we're excited to share it with our community as well.
I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham here with Bree Zabrowski, and thank you to Kinshasa Garrett for the conversation today. Thank you, viewers, for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Steps. You can find this episode as well as all of our other episodes on YouTube and Facebook at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creation. So be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share. We'll be back with another flashback episode from season 3 next week, and we hope that you will check it out. Until then, we hope you